Margaret, last Concorda, I do welcome this piece of legislation, this bill, and indeed, as the previous speaker mentioned, certainly the whole area of Cormac and the different aspects to this area that people are really struggling with. And it's a sad indictment, really, in our country, that when you meet people in our clinics, when people come to my office, and I'm going to thank the girls, my office, ladies, come in, especially, I can mention many, but air is a disaster completely. And people out in rural areas, very rural, isolated areas, who are depending on, for safety and security, on a pendant alarm. And their airline might be down for a month, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes 6 months, and cannot get through and can navigate the system, elderly people especially. And I walked in one day and I had my daughter saying, please don't pass me to somebody else. There was a woman sitting in front of her for an hour and a quarter onto a company, and they had to be there to identify themselves in case of GDPR. But pass from Billy to Jack to Nate to Tom to Mary to Billy and back around the house again, and you get no resolution. And I think it's so frustrating. I recently met a nurse in a hospital in Dublin, and I hadn't seen her there for the last couple of years. I hadn't seen her before. Oh, she had just moved back from England, from the UK. I used to be over every year, she said, to visit my mother on her holidays, but I never realised that things were so bad with utility companies until I came back with her family, kids, 4 kids, which was great, bought a house and tried to navigate with the utility companies. She said it was a nightmare compared to what it is in the UK. So what is wrong with us here in our supposedly modern, inclusive state when we're excluding people, we're discriminating against people, especially people that are not, and I had one of them myself, I'm not good at IT, and it's probably age, but I know I do. I remember when I was chair of the Adult Education Board, I often gave certs to 90-year-olds who went back and did their leaving certs and everything else, and it's wonderful to see it, but many people, and proficient, with electronic gadgets, but especially, as I said, older people, they're not into them. They barely turn on RT1 television and off, and it's, the remotes and all, and it's scandalous that they're not looked after, and they're neglected and abandoned by these companies, and paying dearly for the pleasure of being neglected and abandoned. And it's very serious. And we seem to just pass it off. We have comregulars, we have a plethora of regulators now, but honest to God, I wonder sometimes what is their function, because they don't seem to be able, or suffer from inertia or whatever, dealing with these companies. They can't seem to be able to get companies to behave properly. And that's all. It's good, because I'm in business, or part of a business, and it's, thank God, celebrating 40 years this year. And I want to thank my wife and my son for carrying on when I'm in this present job. But we wouldn't have any customer if we behaved the way they're behaving. We'd have no customer. It's just customer service. It doesn't need to apply to them. And I'm not blaming the people at the other end of the phone. Often it's farmed out to different companies, call centres and all the rest of it. And it's just so sad, that people have to be so forced to come to us as politicians, go to the Ombudsman, go to the likes of Joe Duffy, or indeed radio show talks. You hear it all the time. Just total and utter frustration, people being abandoned by with services that they paid for. They're already paying the taxes to support many of these, set up of the rollout of air and look at broadband. I mean, I have people that are 100 metres and maybe a little longer from a centre that has broadband, and they can't get it, and they're told to be 2-3 years. It's shameful in this modern era. When I think of being at a Fianna Fáil dish, which I was, when the late Albert Reynolds held up a phone, the old big phone that we used to have in the hall stand in the house when we got it first, and you were afraid to go near it as kids. It was polished twice a week, but you weren't allowed to touch it, because when you dialed, you got onto the post office, local post office, and they had to put you on. But anyway, he held it up. He said, "I'll have a phone in everyone's house within a month," and he succeeded. And that was 1978 or 9. He succeeded, and now people will be waiting infinitely indefinitely for their phone line. For ESB, to be fair to them, are very good. They're very good customer service, and they're very good at repairs if there's outages, and they're good in all kinds of weathers. But as the other companies, I mean, and then some come and some go. But the broadband situation is just, and we have time scales given for rollout, and just none of them are met, and they're supposed to be fined. And paying huge fines, but I don't know who's fining them or how they're paying the fines. It's public money that's funding the rollout broadband scheme. So is that the public paying the fines as well, contributing to pay the fines as well as waiting for the broadband? And I think it's just appalling. Quite simply appalling. It's a sad statistic in our modern country when we see the young people with all the smartphones and everything else, but when ordinary people can't get services that they were used to having, and the great people that worked in some of those service providers in Eircom, and Telecom Éireann and in Eircom, and the gangs of men. Now, someone could come from to my area in Clonmel here. They could come from Mayo to repair literally that distance, to repair an outage or a cable or whatever, and to see then all the poles rotting, falling into ditches, wires hanging down top of ditches. Farmers can't cut their fences, get tangled up machines. They're dangerous. And it's a scandalous to have a quasi-public utility to have no pride in their work and have no... The morale must be very low as well, but they have no staff left. And I had one of them here with me yesterday, part of your colleague, and his wife Johnny, who works for me, were here visiting me on Tuesday, and he was dedicated Eircom and Air employee for all his life. And you know, it's a pity with the service they gave, and many more like them, and now we can't. So I hope this legislation isn't just ticking a box, and it isn't just you know, passing another piece of legislation here. If we have no proper regulators with proper teeth to regulate it, because it's so frustrating. As I said, I want to be repetitive for people to be paying for a service and be punished without a service, and then the frustration of trying to deal and wait and deal and get fobbed off literally. So I hope the legislation will make some impact here, but I very much doubt it. Good.